2025 was a pretty rough year for me, okay? And usually the movies are the things that keep me grounded, and it's like, oh man, even if is going crazy right now, at least I have a lot of really good movies to talk about. And 2025 is a weird movie year. I think it's overall the weakest we've had since probably 2022 or 2021, maybe even 2020. I think we took 2023 and 2024 a little bit for granted. There were so many great movies in those past couple years. And I wouldn't even say this was like a bad year for movies. There were just a lot of like really solid 3 or 3.5 star movies. And when it comes to looking at my top 10 movies of 2025, I compared it to top 10 of 2024, which my top movie of this year would probably be around the 5th or 6th spot of 2024 and probably be around the 4th or 5th spot of 2023. That's how good those 2 years have been. And the 10 movies on this list, I really appreciate a lot, and I can't wait to talk about them. These are not the 10 movies that I would necessarily recommend to everybody. There's going to be some movies on here that you're going to watch because of this video, and you're going to be like, what the hell was this guy talking about? I'd like to think I'm a man of taste. What I mean by that is I'm cool with every kind of movie. I don't care what genre you are. I don't care what your budget is. If Avengers Doomsday moves me next year, even though I'm not a Marvel person, it will be on my top 10 movies of the year. And I feel like in years past, there have been some movies I try and sneak onto the top 10 list just because I want to recommend them or I want them to get a broader reach in terms of an audience. And I really tried to stop myself from doing that this year. I really just wanted to be like, okay, when I look back on 2025, what are the 10 movies I'm going to think about the most, remember the most, enjoy the most, or was moved by the most? And these are those 10 movies. So be sure to leave your top 10 movies of 2025 in the comment section down below. It's my favorite time of the year where we get to compare lists. But let's just hop into it. These are my 10 favorite movies of 2025. Starting our list off at number 10 is a film that will not start any controversy whatsoever, and that is The Voice of Hind Rajab. For those of you that don't know, Hind Rajab was a 6-year-old in Gaza that made a phone call while she was being shot at by IDF soldiers, and the film reportrays the events in a very interesting way. This is like a documentary fiction blend where the phone call is the real phone call from Hind Rajab, but the people that are trying to rescue her are played by actors recreating the same types of people that were in that room responding to this call. And yeah, you could probably tell this is not a light watch. This is probably the hardest watch of a movie on my entire list. It really moved me deeply. And it's not just that the story they picked is powerful. The filmmaker does such a good job at blending these documentary elements. I know she made that film Four Daughters, which I haven't seen but heard great things about. But there are certain moments where she will blend the fiction filmmaking and the actors with the real life events and the footage that we have of this scenario. It's just so mind-blowing how she pulls it off. Whenever I watch movies, I'm trying to look for things I haven't seen before, and that was something I saw and I'm like, man, I have never seen anyone do something like that in a movie in my entire life. And when you add in the effectiveness of the real life story, it's impossible to watch this and not feel uncomfortable. The only reason it's not higher on my list is I do think with the idea that the filmmakers are portraying, there's only so much you could do in making a movie out of it. And I do think they maximize the idea that they're going for. And by the end of it, I just felt like she made a really good movie about a devastating, horrible event. And as the years pass by, I feel like this is a film it's going to be hard for me to forget. I'm always going to remember my experience watching this. I have zero desire to ever rewatch it. It was the only film festival screening I've attended where they prefaced the screening with they had like therapists outside of the theater to talk to if you felt so uncomfortable. And even though I feel like a lot of films would use it as a marketing ploy, like this is the one scenario where I'm like, okay, I kind of understand. And it might be too hard of a watch for a lot of people, but if it's something you feel like you could handle, I think it's one of the most important movies of the entire year. And if you think we were going to have something light and easy at the number 9 spot for my favorite movies of the year, you're going to be sorely mistaken because we have Bring Her Back. This is another A24 horror movies brought to us by the Filippo brothers, who recently made Talk to Me a couple years ago, which I also really enjoyed. Just super creative horror filmmaking, and Bring Her Back is pretty much on par, I would say, with Talk to Me. I think Talk to Me is a pretty evil movie, but it's a bit more fun. It's a bit more hip, I guess you could say. Whereas Bring Her Back is just such an evil, awful horror movie in the best kind of way. And these guys, man, they are some of the most exciting horror filmmakers we have right now. I know there's a lot of horror filmmakers that are getting a lot of attention, and I do think they are getting, rightfully so, a lot of attention, but I don't think enough people appreciated how good they are at horror filmmaking this early in their career. And I want to approach this video with kind of a recommendation perspective. So I think Bring Her Back is one of those movies where you don't want to know a lot lot going into it. I would just say if you are somebody that likes a really kind of fucked up horror movie, this is going to be so up your alley. And it has an amazing performance from Sally Hawkins. She is playing one of my favorite supporting roles of the entire year. I've never seen her perform in this kind of caliber, and I think she absolutely crushes it. It's one of the only horror movies I could think of where it almost brought some people to tears in like an emotional kind of way. Like there's a real emotional impact on a lot of the story and characters here. And what the Filippo brothers are so good at is they take these tropes that you think you've seen this kind of horror movie done a million times before with this type of subgenre of horror they're doing, but they find such a fun way to do a twist on it that makes the entire thing feel so fresh. And there are so many images in this movie. Like Talk to Me has the iconic hand. They have some iconic moments in that film for sure. But there are so many more images in Bring Her Back that have stuck with me so much longer than Talk to Me. And I don't know which one I would pick in terms of which one I like more, but the fact that they are so close together for me proves how much I really like this movie a lot. It's one of the most memorable films of 2025 and one of my favorite horror movies of the entire year easily. And now with number 8, we're finally going to lighten up the list a little bit. We have Yorgos Lanthimos' Begonia, one of the other darkest movies of the entire year, where Jesse Plemons plays this conspiracy theorist who is convinced that Emma Stone, who's this big-time CEO, is actually disguised as an alien meant to take over the human race. And Yorgos Lanthimos is one of those filmmakers that I do really like him overall, but a lot of his recent films like Poor Things, Kinds of Kindness, The Favorite, even though I like all three of those movies, they just don't hit the way they do for a lot of other people, for me personally. Whereas stuff like The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer, which that is my favorite film from him so far, go down such like this surrealist dark route that I just love that style of filmmaking. I still have to see Dogtooth. It's a sin I haven't seen it already, but Begonia definitely fits in that group of Yorgos movies, which is more my style anyway. And I just think this movie is just a lot of fun, man. Like there are so many moments in here that are so satisfying. He does such a clever spin on the unfolding of certain events that I was still blown away, even though I thought I knew what was going to happen. That just makes it so satisfying. Like Jesse Plemons easily gives one of my favorite performances of the year. He is so good in here. Emma Stone is also, I mean, she's Emma Stone. She's one of the best actresses we have working right now. She's also great in this movie. I think it's one of the funniest movies of the entire year. It got some of the biggest laughs out of me. I know watch time is super important for YouTube videos, but I know my dad clicked off this already. This is like, he said this is the worst movie he's ever seen. So it's definitely not going to be for everybody. It's a hard one to recommend to certain groups of people. And again, I don't really want to spoil anything. If you're watching this video and you haven't seen Begonia yet and you think it's up your alley, you got to check it out. And if this gets nominated for Best Picture, I will never hear the end of it from my dad. Coming in at number 7, we have a movie I got the chance to see early, which I was very thankful for, and that is Marty Supreme. This comes from Josh Safdie, who he was teaming up with his brother before, Benny. They made Good Time and Uncut Gems together, which Good Time I've only seen once, thought it was great. Uncut Gems I've only seen once. I really liked it. I probably have to give it a second watch, but the only way I will describe this is however you feel about Uncut Gems, you will almost feel the exact same way about Marty Supreme. There's not much I could say about Timothée Chalamet that hasn't been said. He thinks he's Michael Jordan, and I like that.
I'm really in pursuit of greatness. I know people don't usually talk like that, but I want to be one of the greats. I'm as inspired by Daniel Day-Lewis, Marlon Brando, and Viola Davis as I am by Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps, and I want to be up there.
People are shitting on him for that. I like the approach of people being like, you know what? I'm taking my job really seriously, and I appreciate that. He says this is his best performance of all time. I would disagree with him there. I like him more in Dune Part 2 for sure. I rewatched A Complete Unknown earlier in the year. I think he's probably better in that. He might be better in Call Me By Your Name, but besides those three, like Marty Supreme is another great performance from him. This is definitely the most fun character that he's playing, even though Marty is a piece of shit. And listen, the After Hours style of movie where a character is just trying to get through something and no matter what they do, just something worse keeps happening to them. That is like one of my favorite genres of movie. And I think Marty Supreme is a really good version of that. You got a ton of great performances. Kevin O'Leary is a steal in here. I know the Safdies kind of specialize in a lot of the side characters not being big name actors, and Kevin O'Leary kind of just plays himself. And I think that's why the character works so well. Like it takes a really astute filmmaker to look at that guy and be like, yeah, why am I going to cast an actor when I could just cast the guy that is the character from the movie? I think the score is so good. I think a lot of the jokes are some of the best of the entire year. Like my audience was howling at a couple specific jokes. And I feel like we live in a day and age where so many funny movies, I sit there, everyone around me laughs, and I just roll my eyes. I'm like, what are we doing? But Marty Supreme is genuinely funny. It's got a lot of really well thought out arcs within the movie. So again, I don't want to spoil too much, but I will say the ping pong scenes are filmed pretty incredibly. Again, I want to preface preface this where I'm not as high on it as a lot of critics. Like a lot of people are saying this is a top 2 or 3 of the year, and that's one of the best films of the decade. I'm not going to go that far, but I would be lying if I didn't say this is one of the most enjoyable movies of the year for me, and I am looking forward to watching it again. And spoiler alert, The Smashing Machine from Benny Safdie, not on my list. But my number 6 movie is probably not going to be on anybody's list. So many people have hated on this movie. Some of them haven't watched it. Some of them are just repeating what David Ehrlich said. But I am going to be the Nouvelle Vague defender. This documents the journey of Jean-Luc Godard making Breathless. It follows a little bit of him as a movie critic in the beginning, but a majority of the movie is just him, the actors, a couple other filmmakers from that French New Wave time, all hanging out. And you got the king of hangout movies, Richard Linklater, directing it. And Blue Moon's getting a lot of love this year. I saw it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was solid, but it is not as good as this, at least for me. Coming from somebody that reviews movies online whenever he can and wants to make movies one day, this is clearly something that is up my alley. So maybe this is one of those types of movies where it's just not for a lot of people. But from the second it opened, where you have a crowd full of people applauding the new film, and you just have 4 people sitting there just looking bored as hell, thinking cinema's about to die. And I was like, you know what? I find these people relatable, because I'm sick and tired of, in a year like this, everyone's like, oh yeah, this movie's the best film ever made. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, okay. So maybe this movie just makes me feel better. Maybe it feeds my ego of like, you know what? Maybe I'm on the right path. But there's so much of it that is so enjoyable. I laughed a ton. I'm not even a guy that likes Breathless that much. Like I didn't like it at first. I rewatched it on the plane to Toronto to make sure my opinion was valid. It wasn't as valid. I definitely think Breathless is a solid movie. It's more so an important film than a film I enjoy. And I think a lot of people that felt the way I did about Breathless probably have skipped Nouvelle Vague because that is their opinion of it as well. But I think if you are one of those people, you should still give this a shot. I think it's me and the Golden Globe voters are the people that really enjoyed it, apparently. But even though I'm a huge Richard Linklater fan, Dazed and Confused is my favorite movie of all time, still to this day. I haven't loved a lot of recent Linklater movies, you know, like Hitman. Everyone's like, oh, Hitman's so good. And I'm watching it like, eh. But this is definitely my favorite movie from him since Boyhood. I really enjoyed it. And even if you did enjoy Blue Moon this year a little bit more than Nouvelle Vague, I'm just happy that Richard Linklater is getting the credit he deserves. But I'm not giving him enough credit to put 2 of his movies on my top 10 because Blue Moon just didn't hit that same way for me. It's a new day. I changed because I have a flight in like 3-4 hours. So let's just hop into my top 5. My number 5 goes to One Battle After Another, which is apparently the best film of all time. And I'm a huge Paul Thomas Anderson fan. He is one of the guys that got me into watching movies and wanting to make movies. I'm definitely lower on it than a lot of people. I think this is undeniably a really good movie. I just don't think it's like undeniably a great movie. My favorite part about One Battle After Another, and the reason it makes this list in general, is I do think when it comes to being a stoner comedy, it is pretty excellent. The Big Lebowski is one of my favorite movies of all time. So if you are sort of channeling that kind of energy, you are automatically going to make a spot on my top 10 movies of the year list. And I think when it comes to the writing of those scenes, specifically that whole sequence where Benicio del Toro and Leonardo DiCaprio are teaming up and, you know, you have the skateboarders jumping over the roof, like that entire like 20-ish minute sequence is one of the best sequences of the entire year. And a lot of times I think we take Leonardo DiCaprio for granted. He's easily one of the best actors working today. And I think this is one of his best performances. He is really funny. Like the scene where he answers the door and he's talking to his daughter's friend is one of the funniest scenes I've seen in a couple years. I do think it has a lot of other interesting aspects. Like I do think the prologue is really solid. And I do think a lot of the things PTA is touching on are done really well too. And obviously the chase sequence with the 3 cars is super cool. There's just some things that hold it back from being not only one of PTA's best movies, but also just one of the absolute like top 3 or 2 or 1 best movies of the year for me. And I do think that's because some of the writing, when Leonardo DiCaprio or Benicio del Toro aren't delivering some of the jokes, he gives some of the jokes to some of the other characters, and I just cringe out of my mind to the point where I feel like I'm watching a Doctor Strange movie.
What's this, my mantra? The Wi-Fi password.
And don't ask for the fucking Wi-Fi, because we ain't got none.
I do think it's one of those movies where even though it's not my favorite of the year and I don't love it as much as everybody else, I mean, it's cool to see Paul Thomas Anderson finally get his flowers. And it's kind of like Scorsese winning for The Departed, where The Departed is a great movie. You know, I would even put it probably in the top 10 of Scorsese's movies, but it's definitely not like a top 3 or top 5 for me personally. And that's how I kind of treat One Battle After Another when it comes to Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography. And now we get into the top 4, where everybody's going to be like, really? You put this over One Battle after another. And I felt almost obligated to put One Battle After Another a few spots higher, but if I did, I'd be lying to myself. I'd be trying to fit in with people. I can't do it. I genuinely believe, and I mean this with my whole heart, that I was more moved by Celine Song's Materialist. This is definitely probably the most hated movie on my list. And I don't even think it's like that hated. I just feel like a lot of people were super disappointed because Past Lives is a modern classic. It's one of the best movies of the entire decade for sure. And I don't think Materialist is as good as Past Lives, but I do think Celine Song is so good at making movies about modern dating and relationships. And she has this really cool perspective where she looks at love in both an optimistic and cynical way in both of her movies. And I just think we kind of live in a world where, especially if you go on social media, how everyone's judged nowadays based off their status or what they look like and all these kinds of things. These are things that have existed forever. But I think now that social media has been involved, there's been so much more of an emphasis on that. And I don't think a filmmaker has tackled it nearly as well as Celine Song does in this movie. I think the three leads are really good. A lot of people said Dakota Johnson is flat here. I think Dakota Johnson, this is a role specifically for her where she has a job where she could have no emotions and she has to literally judge the book on the cover. And I think she absolutely crushes that. I think this movie has a lot of the better jokes of the year. For me, a lot of movies also come down to like, how memorable is this going to be? Am I going to remember this for years to come? And I've already been thinking about a lot of specific scenes in Materialist the entire year. And I get why general audiences didn't really like it because they were pitched a rom-com, and this was not really a rom-com. Like if you're going in for a Matthew McConaughey comedy and then all of a sudden you're like, this is a dissection of modern dating. And then from the critic perspective, a lot of people are like, well, it's not as good as Past Lives. And it's like, yeah, not a lot of movies are as good as Past Lives. And I just think Celine Song is the real deal. You know, sometimes people are one-hit wonders. A lot of people said she was a one-hit wonder after just seeing Past Lives in this, but to me, she's one of the most interesting filmmakers working today. I cannot wait to see what she does next, and I would be lying to myself if Materialist wasn't a top 4 movie of the year. Coming in at number 3, we have another movie that a lot of like general audiences like this one, but a lot of critics are like, really? Like this is what we're gonna applaud? And I'm gonna be one of the people that applauds it. I got F1. For a little bit, this was my favorite movie of the year because when I go to the movies, I want to feel something. I kind of said that before. I don't care what the movie is. If you're a horror movie, I want to be scared or have just a great time with it or just be wrecked. If you're a drama, I want to feel every single gut punch in the script. And if you're a sports action movie, I want to see the coolest shit I could possibly see on screen. And I think Joseph Kosinski in the past 3 years is 2 for 2 when it comes to this and Top Gun Maverick because the way he films vehicular action scenes is crazy. A lot of people write this off of like, oh, really? It's just like a basic movie. And these people have no fucking clue the mastery this guy is putting in. If you attached any other director's name like Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve or whatever you want to do and you put their name on this movie, people would be like, oh my God, the sports action cinematography is incredible. But because it's someone like Joseph Kosinski that, you know, definitely gets his flowers, like I think he's a respected director, but he's not talked about in that tier of filmmaker. Like people tend to kind of dismiss it a little bit. I don't think people appreciate that Brad Pitt and all these guys are actually driving Formula 1 cars. Sorry, they're driving Formula 2 cars to make it look like a Formula 1 race. But you get my point, where everything you are seeing on screen for the most part is real. Like obviously there's some visual effects added in here and there. From just a pure technical perspective, this might be the most impressive movie of the entire year for me. From the cinematography to the sound design to the sound mixing to the editing of the racing sequences, which is incredible, to the score. I think the Hans Zimmer score here, yeah, it's another Hans Zimmer score, but it's one of the cooler ones of the entire year in my opinion. And if you think I'm joking, my top played song of the year was from the F1 soundtrack. So yeah, I'm a bit of a freak. I absolutely love this movie. I saw it twice in theaters. Brad Pitt is a real deal movie star. He's one of the last ones. We need people like him to keep doing movies like this. I don't think it reaches the heights of Top Gun Maverick, but I think very few blockbusters ever will. There's just too many people that write off a movie these days just because it's basic. But in my opinion, some of the best movies of all time are very basic at their core. I'm not saying this is one of the best movies I've ever seen, but it is one of the most exciting movies I've seen in the past few years. It's one of the only movies that cost $300 million that looks like it was made for $300 million. Compare this to any of the big budgets that Disney's doing recently, and it's like night and day. You can't believe the sludge you are looking at compared to F1. And I know it's in my number 3 spot, but there's still an argument that this could be my favorite movie of the year. My top 3 have been kind of like shifting spots the past few months, but I'm going to keep it at number 3, and I feel like number 2 has to go to one of the best events of the entire year, and that is Zach Cregger's Weapons. I know a lot of people have seen it by now, but I know there are still some people that want to watch it, so I'm not going to get into spoilers because this is the movie you can't spoil for yourself. But at the same time, if you haven't seen it yet, this was the best theater theater experience of the entire year. I saw it 3 times. It just coincidentally, the first time I saw it with my girlfriend while I was here, and then when I went to Jersey, I saw it one time with my sister and one time with 2 of my friends. All 3 times were an absolute blast. And not to turn this into a Netflix buying Warner Brothers is an absolute disaster video, but Weapons was distributed by Warner Brothers. And watching Weapons at home by yourself is still going to be a really great experience. It would still make my top 10 list. It would still probably be my number 2 spot personally. But I can't emphasize enough, if you didn't see Weapons in the theater, you did not see Weapons, where you were surrounded by a room of people that when certain things happened at certain points of the movie, everyone had an audible gasp or an audible what the fuck at the same time. It was an unmatched experience this year. I wish Weapons could play in a theater year round so I could always watch it with somebody that hasn't seen it yet and watch them react audibly and visually. Of the 2020s so far, it's definitely one of my favorite horror movies. I just think it's an absolute blast. Even if you feel like you know what the reveals are going to be, the way it's always handled is just a genius way to tell the story. The James sequence is easily one of my favorite sequences. Not one of, it's probably my favorite sequence of the year. Actually, no, my favorite sequence of the year we're going to talk about in a second, but it's like my second favorite sequence of the year. And if I was in charge of the Academy Awards, I would consider nominating Austin Abrams. I think he is so stupidly good in this movie. And I know it would never happen. I know that's not a conventional Oscar choice, but I've seen the movie 3 times, and just like the little movements he does and the way they sync up the music to how he's doing it, he plays that role perfectly. And I just love watching directors cook. I love watching them be like, you know what? I'm going to really try and make something awesome. I know that sounds stupid, and you think every director tries to do that. A lot of people don't. A lot of people are just trying to get a paycheck. And Zach Cregger's like, nah, I'm going to make something pretty fucking cool. And Weapons was in my number 1 spot for a while, and it could end up switching to my number 1 spot like a year from now. The top 3 was tough, but 1 and 2 have been switching. But I can't emphasize enough. I think Weapons is awesome. If you haven't seen it yet, you have to watch it with as many people that haven't seen it yet. It's scary, it's fun, it's surprising. It's everything you want in a Hollywood horror staple. And even if you didn't like it, you can't argue this is one of the most memorable horror movies in a very long time. And I am so excited to see what Zach Cregger does next. I know he's making a Resident Evil movie. I bet it's going to be pretty fucking good. But coming in my number 1 spot, this is a film I've seen twice, even though it hasn't been released wide yet at all. I'm very privileged I got to see it. I saw it in Toronto that I paid a screening for. I also got invited to a press screening for this movie. And the first time I saw it, I gave it a 9 out of 10. The second time I saw it, I gave it like an 8.5 out of 10. But like I said, this wasn't like the craziest year for movies for me. And this is a movie I will consistently go back to. It's one of the most impressive things I've seen in a very long time. Even though you don't have the chance to see it yet, you should hopefully be able to soon, because my favorite movie of the year is Mona Fastvold's The Testament of Anne Lee. Mona Fastvold is married to Brady Corbet. They both wrote The Brutalist together, and Brady directed The Brutalist, which is a movie notoriously I thought was good the first time I saw it, but I did think it was really overrated. I completely changed my opinion after I saw it 2 more times, and it's easily one of my favorite movies of 2024 and one of the best movies of the entire decade. But The Testament of Anne Lee, Brady and Mona both wrote this together, but this time Mona is directing it. And in a lot of ways, it is very similar to The Brutalist, even though it's a very different take on that kind of story. So Anne Lee was a member of the Shakers, which is known as the Shaking Quakers. They had Quaker beliefs, but since they are so crazy and sporadic with their worship, they look like they're shaking, but a lot of their worship is literally singing and dancing. So they take this idea and they turn this movie into a musical about Anne Lee, who was not only a member of the Shakers, but they had this theory that what if the second coming of Christ was a woman, since God is kind of like all encompassing. And they believed that Anne Lee, who was played by Amanda Seyfried here, was that second coming of Christ. So this movie is kind of the Testament of Anne Lee. It's like you're watching a book from the Bible, which obviously makes sense with the name, because there's a lot of narration in this movie, which it gets knocked for. There are also some chunks that feel like they are missing, and even though that is my complaint of the movie, not the narration part, but more so like towards the end of it, it feels like we kind of rushed to the ending and it feels like there's 20 minutes missing. But at the same time, it is showing what happened to Anne Lee in a really effective way. And for that, and the fact that this is a pretty weird movie, I would have a tough time recommending it to a lot of people. Like if you watch this movie and you don't like it, I completely understand. The reason I love it so much is I really appreciate when a filmmaker is really trying to make one of the best movies of all time. And I know that sounds really ridiculous to say. I know people have been shitting on Chalamet recently because he keeps saying, you know, I'm giving my all into this. I think I'm doing some all-time things. I don't exactly agree with the wording of how he's saying it, but I at least really respect how Timothée Chalamet is like, yeah, I'm trying to be one of the best of all time. Even though Christopher Nolan doesn't come out and say it, there are books written where every movie he goes to make, in his head, he is saying, yeah, my goal is to make one of the best movies of all time. He's probably the best working filmmaker right now for a reason. Brady Corbet went on the record. I was listening to an interview with him last year when he was talking about The Brutalist, and his whole point was like, if you're not going to try and make one of the best things of all time, what's the point of trying to make a movie? And a lot of people disagree with that. I don't. I 100% agree. Like, if you are not trying to make the best thing possible, like, why are we even doing it? That's why so many of us complain that a lot of movies aren't that good in the first place right now. And I don't think The Testament of Anne Lee is one of the best movies of all time. But I do think Mona is putting something on screen I have never seen before. I mentioned how this is a musical, and that is not usually my go-to genre. This isn't really a musical, though, because it's using all these hymns and worshiping sounding music that is just portraying how these people would pray back in the day. I'm not going to act like I'm a musical savant. I'm not like a choreographer genius, but you have to go see this on the biggest, loudest screen you can. Like, more so than the screen, the loudness of the speakers. Try and find a theater that really knows what they're doing when it comes to the sound system, because the first time I saw this movie, I thought I was going to be ascended into heaven. It is some of the craziest music, sound design, and choreography ever put to screen. There's one specific worship sequence that takes place probably in the first third of the movie that's in like this house where the camera is following all these people worshiping together. And I swear to God, it is one of the most beautiful, well-crafted things I have ever seen in my entire life. I'm watching it and it's like this dance. It looks like everyone is improvising their own thing. And there's so many people on screen that you're just looking around the room like, I can't believe every single person here was given an assignment, that all of this is planned out, but it looks so crazy. It's like when people tell you to go see a Mission Impossible movie just to see the stunt that Tom Cruise is going to do, or to go watch Mad Max Fury Road because the action sequences are incredible. I feel the same exact way about The Testament of Anne Lee, except instead of action sequences, I'm like, yo, dog, you gotta go see this for the choreography. It is truly some of the craziest, best filmmaking I've ever seen. And that sequence in particular is the best sequence of the entire year, in my mind, no doubt. But then there are so many other musical sequences that do different things, whether it's something with the editing or whether it's just Amanda belting her singing skills out. And it does all of this in a way that I didn't expect, because when I was pitched that this was going to be about a woman that was told that she was the second coming of Christ, I thought this was going to be a movie about a crazy person. But in reality, it takes this very non-cynical look at her life and all of the good things she tried to do. And how, even though, like, I know religion is a touchy subject and a lot of people have very different beliefs, and there are obviously a lot of things in religions I do not agree with, but I do think a lot of people that go into religion, there's a base of, I'm just trying to be a better person. And I think if anything, Anne Lee does a good job of portraying her as like, I just want good things to happen to people. I want to protect people. I want to fight for what's right, you know? And I just think it's a beautiful movie in that regard. I think Amanda Seyfried is incredible. I think this is definitely a much better movie than Hamnet, even though I think Jessie Buckley will win the Oscar and probably should. Jessie Buckley is incredible in Hamnet. I'm not going to deny that. But what I am going to say is crazy. And one of the other reasons I think like Mona Fastvold and Brady Corbet both have to keep making movies because they are keeping cinema alive, is that when I watched this movie, I had no clue it was made for $10 million. And when I heard that fact, like, I already knew it was crazy that The Brutalist was made for $10 million. Like, that's an insane feat. But the fact that this was too, and all of the sets they're doing and the costume design and all the extras, I just like genuinely, it makes me question everything when it comes to Hollywood. Because even something like Hamnet, you know, it's very similar period piece kind of thing, was made for like 3 or 4 times the budget of this. And to me, I can't wrap my head around that. One battle after another. Like I said, it made my top 10 of the year. Really good movie. No denying that. Has a lot of really impressive sequences. But that movie cost like $150 million. Like, the fact that this had a 15th of that budget, I just can't understand. To me, every future filmmaker has to go through a masterclass with Brady Corbet and Mona Fastvold on how to use your money. And I just have such a deep respect for both of them as filmmakers. I know Anne Lee isn't in talks for the Best Picture race. I understand. I heavily disagree. But I know the marketing campaign wasn't there. I know this is kind of a weird movie for a lot of people. But I do think it's a fucking crime against humanity that Mona is not in the talks for Best Director right now, because I think she does the best directing job. Maybe of the decade. That's probably an exaggeration. Of this year, like, there's nobody that did the work that she did. The editing is really good in this movie, but you can't edit a movie movie like this if it's not planned to the T so far in advance. And the fact that something on this scale could be made for $10 million, it's insane. And for that reason alone, like, I know I was debating between this, Weapons, and F1 for my spot. I feel pretty solidified talking about them that this is the 1, 2, 3 of the year. When it comes out, I hope you give it a chance. I hope you love it. You know, it's not going to be for everybody, but to me, it's something I'm going to go back and study a lot. And that's my top 10 movies of the year. You know, I know there's a lot of really good movies or good movies that didn't make my list. They're going to make a lot of people's list. People are going to ask, where's Sinners? It's a good movie. No other choice. Really good movie. It was just an accident. Really good movie. Hamnet, good movie. Like, I do think 2025 in that regard was a year that had a lot of good or really good movies. I'm just looking for the ones that are doing something I've never seen before and people just operating on a different level. And I'm not saying those filmmakers that I just mentioned didn't, you know, but I just think those movies are working better for a lot of other people. And I don't want to be the guy that makes the list that everyone else is making for two reasons. I don't want to be the person that lies and puts a movie on the list that I don't think should be on the top 10 movies of the year list when there's 10 other movies that I think are more deserving. And as you can tell by my list, I don't really subscribe to like one type of thinking when it comes to movies. F1 and The Testament of Van Lee are both in my top 3 movies of the year. I don't care if your movie costs 10 million or 300 million. If your movie moved me or made me go like, wow, and I see a filmmaker trying, that's what matters to me. Be sure to comment down below, what are your 10 favorite movies of the year? I love talking to you guys about that kind of stuff. If you still have any interest in my top 10 movies of 2024, please let me know. I would love to make that video if enough people are interested in that. And thank you so much for dealing with me this year. I had so many more plans for YouTube videos this year, like director videos and just movie reviews in general. And like I said, it was kind of a tough year for me business-wise. I had a lot of things to figure out. I still have a lot of things to figure out going into 2026. I'm not going to act like there's still problems I have to fix, but just know, like, I love making videos for you guys. You know, like, if you made to this point in this video, I appreciate you so much, especially so early in my journey as a YouTuber. And I'm not going to act like I'm going to make 4 videos a week starting the first week of January 2026, but I do feel like I owe it to you to know that I have been actively planning on a system to make sure I get a lot more videos out for this channel, because I really appreciate you guys. Everyone that's been here on my off and on for the past like 10 years at this point, whether this is the first video you've seen from me or the 100th, you know, I really do appreciate you. I hope you've had a much better 2025 than me. I hope your 2026, you have a lot of plans. I hope you're setting goals of things you want to accomplish. And hopefully I make your 2026 a little bit better. Hopefully I have a lot of videos coming out that you're going to enjoy next year. So this is Chase. Thank you so much for watching, as always, this video and every other video of the year. I know there weren't a lot this year, but I appreciate you either way. And I hope you have an awesome holiday season with you and your family. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll catch you in 2026.